evening, everyone. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info. New format here we're still experimenting with for the new season. First of all, can you guys hear me okay? I know, Andrew, I see you in the chat here. I'm not sure if the microphone is picking up as well in Streamlabs as we had on YouTube, but we'll just treat this as kind of an experiment here tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you are catching this one a little bit later, this is a video I'm posting after the conclusion of the premiere of the video on Gary Bradberry. And so just kind of open the floor to talk about that a bit, as well as some of the off-season news here. Thank you, NASCAR guy. Let's see. Can you guys hear me okay? I just want to make sure. I'm sorry to lean on that so much here, but I'm really, volume level's a little low. Okay, we might try different input. Let's see. That's bizarre. I was having issues with that here. I might do the webcam mic just as a stopgap measure here. Let's try that. Oh, why is this muted? Hang on. Is that any better, or are we still kind of low here? Might not be working. That would not be great. Got it plugged in here. Let's see. All right. Unfortunately, that's up about. Is it high this one? Nope. Nope. Okay. Work in progress, folks. All right. Let's see. Let me try. Okay, not that one. Might do the webcam mic. It'd probably come out a bit louder. Okay. How about that? Does that sound any better, folks? I know it might be a little tinny here. It'll probably be the webcam mic to the side here. Worse? Oh, that's not good. Okay. Switch it back. Alright. Let's see. Let's test. Wow. Okay, yeah, that is awfully quiet. Is there a way to turn that up? Sync offset. You can hear me. Okay, that's good. I guess I'll just have to speak up or bring the microphone even closer here. Or I'll probably lean in closer. Okay, maybe try to do that. All right, doing the test on here. It sounds kind of okay, but yeah, we don't want it to sound worse. Okay. All right, better on that side. Okay. Maybe it's just playing tricks with me. I'm not sure. Okay. So, yeah. So this is one thing I'm working on here over the off season. Here is kind of experimenting with the format for the live streams. Kind of put a little more production value behind it. If you're coming in here a bit later, I have an intro that I played at the beginning of this as well as a loading screen thing in the background. Hopefully in time I can work out the kinks of that before the season starts, and we'll get more into that as well. But again, thank you to those of you who were able to tune in for the video on Gary Bradberry. This is a video I've been meaning to do for a while. You know, just it's been kind of an interesting project along the way here. One of those drivers that I did mention back in my Why NASCAR Was Awesome in the 90s, besides Dale Earnhardt, and I mentioned him among the interesting names out there. But really, I hadn't really thought about doing a full-on project until John, one of the followers here on the Lastreon, actually reached out to me during the Las Vegas trip, made a generous donation there, and said, hey, you ever thought about doing a video on Gary Bradberry? And that was kind of the inception of that. And I wanted to kind of jump into doing that as soon as I had some time here this off season. So that's the first video here in the meantime. The other video that I'm working on here, of course, is still the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. So don't sweat for those of you guys that are big fans of that series. There's going to be more of that coming up here in the near future. So we'll have some more content on Score Motorsports and Hermie Sadler's career as we work ahead here. I'm still looking on setting up an interview here to hopefully tighten that up a bit. The script is pretty much ready to go. I'm debating about just going with it and just jumping in there, but I really like having those interviews in there to kind of tie it up. So what I might do is work ahead towards the next video and just backfill this one whenever it gets done. And that'll be kind of the approach on that side. So yeah, certainly with doing the video on Bradberry, again, one thing that was really surprising, and I think really kind of came across in the video as well, was how good in qualifying he actually was for much of his career. May not have had the actual results to show for it, but in terms of actually getting a car into the race, I think a lot of team owners could certainly do worse than to hire Bradberry, and a lot of them did. And especially for a lot of the teams that he drove for were single car operations that did a partial to full schedule, did very few starts, and really couldn't make ends meet as best they could. But then when they got Bradberry in the car, sometimes he outperformed even veteran drivers that had tried to drive for him, like Bobby Hillin Jr. was mentioned in the video, and other competitors along the way. So really kind of interesting in that sense. I did reach out to Gary through contact on the Charlie Bradberry site, which is where I got some of the great photographs on there. But unfortunately wasn't able to reach out to him in the time there, and I didn't want this to get held back as well as the Sadler one, so I decided to go ahead and get that done, especially with the Snowball Derby this weekend, which is a big reason I decided to post this on Thursday before those activities, along with the NASCAR awards ceremony, really pick up this weekend. Yeah, I mean, it was really it was an enjoyable project. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Big thanks to Brian Hallman again for contributing his pictures as well. When I told him about this project, he said he had a lot of pictures from Gary's career, and that was definitely something that he was looking to add into the video there, and he really came through on that. I think I pretty much used all the pictures that he sent, so big thanks to him as well. And interesting little articles along the way. I didn't realize the thing about people, there's a contest for people to eat breakfast with Bradberry going into the Brickyard 400 weekend in 1996, and then it turning out that he would actually have that breakthrough qualifying run in second round qualifying that kind of made him more of a fan favorite there. So ended up staying the entire weekend there. Or I guess back then the Brickyard was on a Saturday, so I guess it wasn't the full 3 days there, but still part of it there. So that was definitely interesting. Yeah, so, and also really, one thing I didn't really touch on in the video, and of course you know that from the opening of it, is also the kind of the declining days of the Alabama gang. There was actually one article that I researched for this project that pointed out the fact that by the late 90s, the Alabama driver contingent was a lot smaller than obviously it had been in the 80s and 70s and so on. Obviously, the passing of Davey Allison in 1993 being a part of that, and of course Neil Bonnet in the spring of 1994, you still had drivers like Hut Strickland and Steve Grissom in the sport, but they kind of cycled out of the sport around the same time Bradberry was there. Bradberry was actually the last survivor of that group to be able to compete as late as 2002. I believe Strickland had some starts that were pretty close to that as well. Now that I think about it, yeah, he drove for Bill Davis in 2002. So Strickland got ahead of him there a bit. But you know, Steve, and well, I guess, yeah, and Steve Grissom also, now that I think about it also. So yeah, so 2002 saw a resurgence, I guess, if nothing else. Probably a story in its own right there with those guys getting into the mix there. But it lost some rides around a time where Bradberry was still trying to make ends meet with Jim Wilson team. Unfortunately, it didn't work out there, and made just that one start with Don Levy, and ended up being the last of his Cup Series career. Certainly, again, I want to make sure to mention the story of Charlie Bradberry as well, going into the Snowball Derby this weekend. A tragic story that he's no longer with us after the traffic accident that was mentioned in the video there as well. I know that the age difference was something that a lot of people noticed in the video, and that was certainly something I was checking out as well. Certainly seeing those older pictures of Gary on a motorcycle with Charlie, it looked like it's father and son, but it turns out just a very large difference in age there, kind of a Michael Waltrip, Darrell Waltrip kind of scenario there. But you know, again, it's just, you know, you have different competitors who race in these different series over time and maybe don't get talked about that much. So really the video is as much about Charlie Bradberry as it is about Gary, and really that tie-in with the Bradberry racing effort that they had done as best they could to try to get into the Cup Series twice, in fact. I think it's fascinating that Gary himself had driven a few starts with his own equipment. I would have loved to know where he got the cars from and how they were able to get those cars actually qualified in races, especially at tracks like Charlotte and Michigan, which at the time, in the late 1990s, still had very large entry lists, and it was anything but a guarantee that anybody would actually qualify for any of these races. But that was certainly the case that time around. And then Charlie doing the same thing, working his way into the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, what was then, of course, the Busch Series, and never got to get into the Cup Series, but trying the very best that he could as well. Those iconic, I guess, red vehicles with the white numbers on them, very simple looking, but still hallmarks of a family that, yeah, again, doesn't get talked much about in the sport, and that's definitely the kind of stories that I do enjoy sharing along the way. So again, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys haven't checked out the video yet and you're watching this stream, of course, there's the video is now publicly available there, so you guys can check it out. It's about 27 minutes long, I believe. The running time came out to. Very much in the same vein as the J.R. Charbonneau video I did back over the summer. I'm hoping to make more of these slightly shorter videos to kind of stagger between the Rise of the Field Fillers episode. That's at least the plan over the off season, to kind of build that up going into the regular season to start things off. But we'll certainly get to that point along the way there. So, yeah, see, there you go. SIF, SRE, yeah, see, you're talking about the same thing. So you have similar kind of setup there where you have different, different age gaps there between siblings, so, I mean, I can tell just, Lastbro and myself are 4 years apart, and there's already enough of a difference there. I imagine, yeah, like 18 years you're talking about there and so forth, certainly, adds to that as well. But, again, there's, much like you see with the Bradberries as well, that passion for racing stayed there, and both of them having notable moments at the Snowball Derby, which was, again, another big reason to kind of push that this weekend here. And I see, Brian, you're in the chat there as well. Thank you so much for your contributions again in the photographs there. I think I pretty much emptied the bucket there on your collection there of Bradberry pictures you provided me, so big thanks to you on that. Getting those into the video as well. Certainly on a subject like this where you don't really have, I was surprised there was much video footage as there was. I figured there was some from Daytona qualifying, but I wasn't sure if there's going to be much more. And then I started watching some of these ARCA races over the fall there, and seeing, of course, his dominant win there at, I believe it was Winchester. Really cool to see some old footage there. So big thanks to those of you who are also posting a lot of that content on YouTube. I put a playlist of all the video that was used in that video, like I do with the other ones, so you can check out the full broadcast for those as well. And I definitely encourage you to certainly do so if you're looking for more information of that end too. So in the process here, again, I still have the next episode of the Field Fillers in the works, and also have other standalone videos. I have another driver feature that's I started working on about October, November, so that'll probably be the next one that is going to get worked on here if I don't hear from Sadler. And then from there, I'll be working on the next Field Fillers episode after Sadler. And I'm very anxious to get to that one because I have kind of a longer-term plan with the series that'll be much more clear after that episode is completed. So we'll certainly find out about that as well. I also want to give special thanks to everyone for checking out the stuff I put on the eBay auctions this week. That was kind of a long time coming because I've had people ask if they wanted extra bumper stickers or things of that nature. I kind of done them individually through the PayPal.me thing, but that just wasn't very efficient, and I think it doesn't give a good indication of stuff that's out there. So yeah, I've now made the loose diecast available that I have that originally just available for $10 members of the Patreon, but now have those available for $5 each with free shipping. Those of you that are in the Patreon, of course, you get the added bonus of the last place statistic that goes with the car, and the bumper sticker and so forth is lumped into that. So there's still perks for that, and as well as special perks with certain bumper stickers for just the Patreon members there as well. So we'll have some more of that stuff there available for you guys, and if you're just looking for stuff for the holidays there too. I know it's a little confusing of a group of merch at the moment here, but I'm trying to get some more stuff up there if you guys are interested in that as well. As a matter of fact, I just got a package from our bumper sticker producer, and I ordered some more of the Kenny Irwin memorial stickers there as well. I'm going to put these on eBay as well for people to check out. And for those stickers in particular, I'm going to have the same arrangement that I did with the other stickers before, where those the profits from these are going to go to the Kenny Irwin Jr. Foundation. So stay tuned for more information on that as well. So, oh yeah, eBay link. I saw the question there. Let me drop that in here as well. You forgive the advertisement here as well. I actually have received some requests on the diecast there, and so I have a few of them I got to drop in the mail tomorrow here. So I'm hoping to get that certainly done as well, of course. So, let me get the, oh, not that one. Okay, I just realized I probably had the screen share thing on here, but I guess I don't have that yet, but we'll get that figured out too. That's another thing I want to kind of do, especially when we're waiting for results from technical inspection and everything. I think that'll be kind of fun to do. Maybe I'll experiment with that tonight on the show, but we'll do that in the meantime. Let me get this all set up here. And if you guys have any other questions or anything on the video or anything else, we'll certainly talk about it. Certainly got some off-season news since our last show, which was after the Phoenix race for the wrap-up here. So we'll have some more to check out on that. Oop, hang on here. There we go. I should just have this bookmarked. I'm going to bookmark this on the screen here afterwards. I think that'll be an easier way to do it. There we go. Add bookmark, and I'll drop it into the chat. Whoop, as soon as I don't close that window, let's open that window. There we go. And there we go. So there's the eBay link right there. So, yeah, what's up, the audio? Still figuring it out. We're doing a different format here. It's a little bit low. I do apologize for that. We're going to keep working on that. I was trying to increase the output on this this hub down here, but it has just not been doing it. And then I tried the webcam mic, and that was worse, so we're not going to do that. But we'll figure it out here in time. Luckily, we got a while till the season starts, and I'll probably do a couple more streams over the off season to kind of figure this out. All right. So let me see here. So one thing that definitely comes to mind this afternoon, those of you who follow my Twitter account, @LastCarOnBrock, kind of a heated discussion already, and I don't use that phrase flagrantly, you know, about the whole issue with the charters and the closing of Starcom Racing. Of course, the part of the coverage back at Phoenix was, of course, the closing of the 00 team and discussions with that. Of course, I'm also working on Derek Cope's biography here at the same time. So still kind of getting stuff in the works there. And of course, once we were covering the action that weekend, that was another part to kind of certainly talk about at the same time. The Starcom team just today posted a link to some t-shirts they're selling in commemoration of the just few years they've been in the Cup Series with drivers like Landon Castle and Quinn Houff and so forth. And of course, the discussion has since come up with the news that apparently $13.5 million paid by 2311 Racing to get the second charter that they needed to make sure that both Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch are able to get a share of the purse next season with the other remaining 34 members of the 36 charter drivers, that being the amount brought to bear. And a lot of discussion, good discussion. I think generally very respectful discussion, and I hope that my responses were as well. I think in one case I wasn't being entirely clear with what was being discussed with the Copes back at Phoenix. So again, one thing that I mentioned very early on, the Copes basically feel that they got squeezed out of the sport, and it's very unfortunate the way things played out. I think there was a discussion from the Copes that they were not sure that the actual provision in the charter agreement, that if you were the bottom three for 3 consecutive years, that they were just going to take away the charter. They weren't sure if that was going to be enforced. In fact, they were told quite the opposite, that was just in there and that was never going to actually be enforced. But the problem is, in a contract, if it's in there and you sign off on it, it's still in there. I mean, it's unfortunate that it wasn't just removed at that point. But then, unfortunately, these are the kind of things that happen sometimes in contract disputes. But there were representations given to them that was not going to be the case, and they did rely on that to purchase the charter at the time. Now, obviously, when things changed these last couple of years, now you got these other celebrities and people investing in the sport, and other teams trying to get the charters. We've seen the value of the charter increase, and you know, I think there's a couple very clear camps about this. I think generally, if you just watch the big teams and you just see the top competitors out there, and you're just concerned about the big teams out there, and the big drivers, the big names, the big sponsors, any thought of these charters is not going to bother you. You'd be like, oh, $13 million, they got Michael Jordan money, they got Denny Hamlin money, they got Toyota money, that's more than enough. Who cares? Starcom's not very fast, they got cycled out of the sport, who cares? And they're counting on that. I think NASCAR is counting on that, and people saying, okay, well, that's not a big deal. The problem is that is still a big deal. And again, I know I will absolutely put my cards on the table. Again, I'm doing Derek Cope's biography. I followed them a bit closer than maybe other people that are talking about this are aware of. And I've been following their team, and I am more partial to these smaller organizations. But they're again, in talking with Derek and Alicia back over at Phoenix, they were talking about a lot of things that they've done in this program to try to make it the best organization they can. Whether it's Ryan Daly producing those many great paint schemes, I think even the most critical people of Starcom Racing would applaud the great paint jobs that they've had on Quinn Houff's cars over the couple of years. Also, they really go the extra mile with their sponsors. Some of those sponsors, the fact that they're old Derek Cope sponsors, even companies like Mane and Tail and stuff like that, the reason they're still involved with the team is that Derek himself was very big on making sure that he stayed in as good of a relationship with his sponsors as possible. And they weren't just sponsors; they were friends and business associates that they worked with for years. That brings on people like the Starcom people, like some of the other backers that they had. In fact, one thing I thought that was most amazing that Alicia brought up back at Phoenix was the fact that when the pandemic struck last year, they didn't lose any of those sponsors. It could have been very easy for those sponsors to say, look, we can't bring our representatives to the track, we can't get them hot passes, we can't actually even get into the infield because nobody can, but they stayed with them. And according to Alicia, who was in control of the sponsorship and making sure that they did what they needed to do, they didn't lose any of those sponsors. And this is something different even from Carl Long. And Carl, worked his butt off there to keep roofclaim.com on there. But as you heard in that Rise of the Field Fillers episode, when the pandemic happened, they came out and they said, look, they're not seeing my sponsor, they're not seeing my car, why am I paying you guys? And then they just left. I mean, they fulfilled their obligation for 2020, but they didn't come back this year, and that team really struggled this season. We saw that very much all the way to the end with the brake failure that David Starr had in the Cup Series finale as well. It was very much a struggle. And, obviously Starcom's teams had that problem as well, but, if you look at it by another measure, they weren't even a factor in the last car championship. They only had, I think the only last place run that Quinn had all season was at the Daytona Road Course. They were going to get last in Nashville when they had a wreck in their first corner, but then Chase Elliott's disqualification shuffled the order. So technically, too, would have changed things a bit. But when you see drivers like Kurt Busch and Eric Almirola and other teams that are very well heeled and still will continue to be next season have even more struggles, they weren't even high in the ranks in that respect as well. I get that there's the frustration there, and I think there's a lot of teams. NASCAR's always had this, and I believe it's always going to have teams that people are going to look at and say, well, why are they even here? Why are they competing? What possible good is it going to do for them to stay out here in the sport? They're not going to be able to have a good run. Well, again, sometimes, you're just competing against teams that are in the back of the field. You're competing against Rick Ware. You're competing against Live Fast Motorsports. You're competing against these other organizations that are around you, and you kind of measure off of them. Obviously, if you're getting lapped in the first 13 laps, you're not really competing for the win. You're trying to just get the best run that you possibly can. And I think even if you had just down to 2 cars out there, and they're both Hendrick cars, you're probably generally going to have one of them be like 5 laps behind at some point, because they're not always going to be nose to tail the whole time. Things happen. Again, they're not going to really go away, and that's just the way it is. But it's unfortunate when again, and what really gets me all the time with this charter issue, and I'll keep banging the drum on this as I have since 2016, 2017 when this was all being discussed. It's restructuring the sport. It's creating a new dynamic to the sport that people are definitely split on. As to whether it's a positive thing. I think if you are just a fan of the big teams and you just look at them and say, oh, well, this is great, and it is great that we have Michael Jordan in the sport and Pitbull and these other investors and that both those teams are looking to expand. But again, what do you want the sport to look like, and what are you willing to give up to get there? Because there's always something that's given up along the way. And unfortunately, we've seen that on the other end. We've seen teams, big teams and small teams, shut down completely. And okay, maybe they get, they're able to get some of their funding back, so they're not just selling the shop and the cars, which is, has always happened in the sport. Teams like Budmore Engineering, and even the original Petty Enterprises having to sell out of the sport that way. But at the same time, you're the it's like it's this typical situation that NASCAR's done where they've created the problem and then said, oh well, this is the way it is now, and so we can't do anything about it. Just like they did with the splitter, and now what they've done with the charters. The value of actually getting a guaranteed spot in the entire season. Back when we even had the top 35 rule, that by itself didn't have a value. Even if it was, even if you were pretty much guaranteed to start all the races anyway that way, because after the first 3 or 4 races, the top 35 was pretty much set. The gap from 35th to 36th always widened up quite a bit because you didn't have that many full-time teams, or you didn't have as many teams that were capable of performing at the same level. I remember in 2010 covering the top 35 battle, I expected it to change constantly, and I thought it was going to be really interesting, but it seemed like once you got past like the spring Bristol race, like 4 or 5 races into the year, you had the same 2 people up here, the same 2 people down there, and 1 guy on the bubble, and it was like, it would fluctuate a little bit. Somebody would get in within like maybe 20 points of them, and then maybe they fall 35 points back, and it was just like, it just didn't change. So we basically had something that was like the charter system without having to create the value in those starting spots. And it's just unfortunate that the other side of this, of course, is that you create the value and then you don't have any oversight to it. So it's completely subject to supply and demand. If you have you have 2 teams that want to get charters, you only have 1 charter available. Well, of course, that price is just going to go right through the roof there. And you have created a paywall. You've created a paywall to get into the sport. And this is on top of the cost of actually building cars, getting a shop, and everything else. This is an additional cost. It can't be treated like it's all part of just getting into the sport. I mean, again, looking further back, like I said, I think it was in the Carl Long episode or the Kirk Shelmerdine episode, it used to be you could just get a car together, you build a car, get some friends together to serve on the pit crew, and just get it out to the track. As long as it passes inspection, you can get the car into the race. Now, of course, there's some conditions to that. Of course, Andy Belmont certainly described that in his field filler episode, that if NASCAR doesn't really want you out there, they're going to find a way to make sure that you're not out there. Even a car that's legal one week is not going to be legal the next week, and it'll be something else. And this could just be the latest chapter that we've seen of it. And it's a great way for NASCAR to kind of point at it and say, well, okay, well, look, it's just the charter system, our hands are tied. But certainly, and again, bringing this back around to talking with the Copes, they really felt that they were getting squeezed out of the sport. I think that NASCAR is going in a direction with what team owners and what teams they want in the sport and which ones they don't want in the sport. And when I heard that, I was thinking exactly the same thing that Linda McDuffie told me about with JD trying to roll into the track with Old Blue and NASCAR officials standing directly in front of him and not letting him go into the garage area and having him basically have to force his way in there to get his car into the garage area and get ready for inspection. This is nothing new. This is the same sport. And so I wouldn't put anything past that as well. So, yeah, and again, people can have different opinions about it and everything, but I do think that, yeah, again, it's when everybody's looking one direction here, and they're all looking at this, and they're all looking at that, it's I think it does kind of behoove people to kind of look this way a little bit and say, hang on, what's the effect of this also? Is every one of these major rule changes, they have a drastic effect. And it was so sad back in Phoenix. I mean, they were talking about how they had a great test at the Charlotte Roval for the next gen car, and yeah, they had Kaz Gralla in the car, who was outstanding at road courses. But in their car, if the big issue is the team and saying the team's not able to perform, well, they put Kaz Gralla in the car, and they're right up there in the rankings with everybody else. They were certainly not the slowest car out there, and you can take that in any direction that you'd like as well. So that's another part of it. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. I do think also that there's a very clear difference between how you measure the health of the sport, and and I've mentioned this in the past before as well. I think the real measure of how healthy the sport is when you look at the teams at the back of the pack. If you have a bunch of start park teams out there, well then okay, maybe you don't have enough teams out there that are actually able to fill the field, and and the other teams out there, they're not able to kind of produce at the same level, or there's a pay structure that's benefiting them to operate that way, where it's more cost effective to exit the race in the early laps where it isn't otherwise. But then if you have teams back there that have sponsors and are attempting the full race, then you have a very strong sport, because even the slowest cars in the field are getting financial backing, and they're able to compete as much as anybody else. The people in the back of the field, are they within 2 or 3 laps of the leader, or are they 15 or 20 laps with it, gap of the leader, and how much of a difference is that? And then nowadays, where you have 36 cars for 40 spots, and you just don't have anybody in those 4 spots, they're just left open, and you have short fields, I think that's not a positive thing. I think you can have people that be like, wow, look at all this money that changed hands, and you had $13.5 million just to start in a Cup Series race, whereas it used to be, oh, well, wow, look at all these 6 or 7 new teams that are joining NASCAR this year. All these people, all these many different team owners that want to get into the sport, that are getting into the sport. Look at how great that is. I want to see how these teams perform. You could have that to a degree. We almost had that with the 2311 and Trackhouse efforts, of course. But in both those cases, a lot of teams had to get shut down for that to happen. Sometimes it would be 1-to-1 back then. You would certainly have teams shut down, and JD benefited as much as he, didn't benefit from that ultimately at the end of his career. But nowadays it takes 2 or 3 teams, or something even more. If technical alliances being what they are, but again, if you're looking just at the top big name teams, you're probably not going to see a problem, and you'll probably just think like, okay, well, I mean, you still have Gibbs out there, you still have Hendrick, you still have Penske, and you got guys like Brad Keselowski investing in Roush, you got Jeff Gordon taking a bigger role at Hendrick, and it looks like those teams are going to be in good shape because they got their next heir apparent in position, and they're going to keep improving and going on forward. But there's been casualties along the way. Trackhouse is very different from Chip Ganassi Racing. We're not going to have Ganassi, and that's going to be different. And we're not just losing small, scrappy teams that aren't competing at all. We're losing mid-tier teams. And I don't know what's going on with this whole GMS thing and Richard Petty. I still don't feel like I have enough information on it. I know that there were other investors with the Pettys that have since pulled out, and now you got a replacement in with that, but that's not the way it was presented. If you got a majority interest in the sport, is it still going to be the 43? Is it going to be the same font? Are they going to? What's going to stay? We don't know. And is there anything going to change from the GMS effort as well? It's really hard to say. It could be just as much like when you had James Finch's team getting picked up by H. Scott Motorsports, a team that also doesn't exist anymore. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I think there's too many things that are up in the air, and there's 2 ways you can look at it. I'd like to look at it. It's kind of like that meme with the 2 guys sitting in the bus. You could be on one side and just be like, oh, this is going to be great. Isn't it great? There's so many things that are exciting, and it's like all this stuff's going to be different, and we don't know what it's going to be. And then you can look at the other side, and you're looking at that cliff face there. I'm afraid I'm sitting on that side of the bus at this point. I'm like, oh, man, like if this, we're going to have, are we going to have 36 cars? Are we going to have, I guess all the charters are pretty much, the game of musical chairs is just about up there, but is the expense of these next-gen cars going to even allow any open teams to get out there? If we haven't even been able to barely fill 40-car fields at a record low rate through 2021, when everybody had all these Gen 6 cars that they're trying to get rid of, I was expecting towards the end of the year we're going to have a lot of 40-car fields with just people just running, as many cars in the field as they could, doing kind of what Motorsports Business Management did, where they just ran 2 cars for a lot of races at the end of the year. I was very surprised nobody else was doing that, because I figured that was just money on the, money on the table. But I guess it just shows like how little money you make, or how much of an expense it is to enter another car, even if it's just going to run at the back of the field. So I don't know. It really is too bad, and I'd like to see things work out on that end, but I don't know. I think it's a real toss-up. The sport change is a constant in NASCAR. It's always been different. There was a time where the 1990s were looked at as a view of like, oh my God, the sport is so different from the way it was in the '70s. What are these cars, these valences? Why are they running the Ford Taurus? Why this? Why that? Why is Cartoon Network sponsoring a car? What happened to the motor oil sponsors? I mean, there was a time that a lot of things that we look at positively today were viewed as negatively back then. And maybe that's the positive side. Maybe this is something that's just an overreaction. But in seeing this is much more, a structural reorganization. And it seems to be, just cutting off a lot of competition that used to make the sport great. I'm glad we're getting practice and qualifying back next year. I mean, thank goodness. Because really, that used to be, one of the major elements of it. Just look at Gary Bradberry's career and how much qualifying defined his career, whether it was first round or second round qualifying in general. I mean, obviously, it's been many years since we got rid of second round qualifying. But just having that first round and have the go or go homers or whatever you're going to call them, trying to fill out the field there, that's a big part of the race weekend experience, and we just don't see that as much because we don't have as many entries. But I don't know. I'm going round and round on this, but that's kind of where I am on all of that. And again, I appreciated the discussion on it. It stayed mostly civil on that. I get a little tweaked when people are kind of saying like, oh, you don't understand this, like I don't profess to be a complete expert on anything. I'm open to learning about anything. If it's learning about franchising or learning about the way it was in soccer, I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a whole system in soccer where you had teams get into the Premier League or get cycled back out. But it provided a great, it was a great addition to the discussion because then you had, at least in that model, teams that could cycle into the top league and cycle back out, and there would be, kind of a revolving door where you can get in and out. You just don't see that anymore. And we've had, even in the peak of the sport, teams like Jimmy Means Racing and Morgan Shepherd's team used to be backmarkers in the Cup Series, even not that long ago, like 2006, 2005 for Shepherd's team. Means' team you saw in the Bradberry video, really, Bradberry was one of the last guys to drive for him before he ended up coming back as an Xfinity team, this being 94 to 95 thereabouts. So, of course now, I mean, Means' team is still in the Xfinity Series, they're struggling, and we haven't seen Shepherd's team as much, but at least they've had some presence there. I'm hopeful that maybe something works out for Shepherd's car, maybe with all the Gen 6 cars going on sale or something working out on that end, but we'll find out. But yeah, that's a whole other piece of the puzzle there. So yeah. But let's see here. So let me get my other. I got my other notes here as well. I want to kind of touch on some other subjects from this. Oh yeah, a couple. I mean, certainly also mentioned at the end of the video there as well. Condolences to the families of Del McCowart, Bob Bondurant, and Sir Frank Williams. Three big names in the sport in very different ways. Certainly in different, obviously, different disciplines. Whenever you have somebody like Sir Frank Williams that's such a big figure in Formula One, you certainly hear respect from one sport to the other. Like when Dale Earnhardt mentioned Ayrton Senna's fatal accident after he won Talladega in 1994. Bob Bondurant, of course, being a big figure in road racing. The driving schools, including the one that they had originally at Sears Point before Skip Barber came in that figure. And, of course, Del McCowart, who has been featured on NASCAR before for his famous incident in the 1997 Winston Open there where he did not get through inspection and went back out on track and was black flagged almost immediately. Interesting figures in the sport and drivers that don't get talked about nearly as much there. But certainly with Delma as well. I know that the Scene Vault podcast, I was listening to the first part of it when they were talking about Rick Wilson. They had some very nice words that Rick Houston and Steve Wade were sharing about Delma's career as well. So definitely wanted to make sure to mention them as well on the show here. I was also glad to see, not also glad to see, but I mean the speaking of figures that we've lost here, Bob Jenkins, of course. Getting the Squire Hall Award for the NMPA, certainly well deserved. I only wish he could be with us to enjoy the award, of course. But of course, a figure that's whose loss is it's still settling in here. Listening to some of those old clips there of him and Benny Parsons there reacting to qualifying moments, definitely something to see there along the way. So definitely good to see other accolades being sent the way of the race fan that got lucky. But we are certainly lucky to have him, of course. On a more positive side here, also pleased to see some news coming out here from the J.D. McDuffie side on the mural that is coming together in Sanford. There was a location that's been picked in downtown. The news breaking from the J.D. McDuffie Facebook group this last week. They are still accepting funds. They've since posted another update that they're still looking to get additional funding to actually finish off that, but they have that at least for the initial deposit to get the ball rolling, pick the opening location, but they're still collecting funds here in the meantime. So definitely check out the GoFundMe on that as well for the J.D. McDuffie mural there. This being put together by Linda McDuffie and other supporters out there. One thing that's very exciting about that is that they are looking to get that set up in September in Sanford. Very excited about that. I'm hoping to possibly make an appearance there for that. I'd certainly love to, because I know I've missed a couple of these things with JD lately, including the Augusta International Awards ceremony that Linda was at, and so forth. So certainly if they're unveiling that in September, we might add the Southern 500 back to the NASCAR schedule for 2022. That's still up in the air. Don't have any updates on that, but hopefully we'll have, if I do make it out there, that'll be more or less the plan to kind of tie all that together and do a race weekend out of that, and throw in coverage of the mural down there as well, because that would be tremendous. I'm very excited to see what that's going to look at as well. I know they've been collecting a lot of great pictures there on the Facebook group. Charlie Birch contributing a lot of his pictures as well, so we'll hopefully get some more information on that very soon as well. Big thanks to Ben Schneider, who is the guest contributor over here at LastCar.info. He had me on his podcast a couple weeks ago. We had some great discussion there about a lot of the other videos and stuff featured on this channel. Talked about Until Lap 11 and 3 Before February, as well as driver profiles, and of course, primarily Rise of the Field Fillers. So if you're looking for some other behind-the-scenes information on that, check out Ben Schneider's channel here on YouTube. He did a great job on the discussion there. I also created a playlist for other podcast appearances that I've had that are available on YouTube. I have a playlist for that that's publicly available on this channel. So if you're ever looking for stuff to kind of check out during the off season there, and a little bit of behind-the-scenes content on what I'm working on here, I'm always open to those discussions and so forth there, so you can check out those and check out Ben's there as well. Let's see. Also in the subject of everything old is new again, certainly excited about news about a number of tracks potentially returning to the NASCAR schedule, some seeming more feasible than others. The funding approved for North Wilkesboro and Rockingham, and I guess some degree to Charlotte as well, already taking effect. We've seen some work already being done at North Wilkesboro, clearing out some of the debris from sections that have sadly collapsed in the years, including the sections there off the corners. But hopefully that's going to result in something very exciting here in the near future. I hope that there's still, I mean, really with Wilkesboro, I hope that they keep like as much of the original character of the track as possible. The big thing I'd always heard over the years is like, oh, well, nobody's going to go down there. It's out in the middle of nowhere. The sewer lines down there are a mess. Nobody's going to want to do that. Well, I mean, all things considered, for a track that's been abandoned since 1996, it still looks like it's in pretty good shape. And I think the iRacing thing that was done last year was actually a big step in the right direction. As much as I would have mixed feelings about how that whole iRacing thing went in general, but we'll see how things go there with that as well. So certainly excited to see what's going to be happening with that construction, as well as Rockingham. Rockingham not going quite as far back in terms of inactivity, of course, with the ARCA series and other divisions running there as well. But of course, with NASCAR, you go back to Carl Long tumbling down the backstretch in the Field Fillers episode. A very different time for them as well. So maybe we'll get back to covering some of those races as well. We actually drove by Rockingham on the way to Darlington in 2017, so that was kind of interesting as well. But we'll see if that gets back on the schedule in one way or another, and maybe check that out as well. So we'll kind of get that looking forward to. There we go. Hey, how's it going there, Captain? Thank you for joining the discussion here as well. I know we're still experimenting with the format. Look, I can even make this. I can make this window bigger, I think, during this. Can I make that bigger? Oh yeah, I can. Look at that. There we go. I can change it right in the middle of the screen. So that'll probably work a little better. I think the chat box isn't taking as much space on the screen as I thought it would. I'm still trying to get it so it can actually be full letterbox format, but life can only be so good. So we'll figure that out as well. Speaking of Rockingham, there was also the other controversial news in the last couple weeks about Mike Harmon getting the 75-point penalty for a testing violation stemming from the cars being run over at the Rockingham track. They ran apparently one of his old Dodges, which has since changed hands, as well as the car that Ryan Ellis tried to qualify at Phoenix a couple weeks ago. They posted pictures about it, and I guess some video as well, and NASCAR was very unhappy about that. It's unfortunate how that's all shaking out. I think we've seen this in the past. Wasn't it Mario Gosselin's team that got their wrist slapped for running one of their cars at the Daytona Infield Road Course last year? It's certainly, a big penalty for a small organization, especially that 74 team. They had tremendous struggles in the entire Xfinity schedule this year, and the last thing they certainly needed was any kind of penalty like this. Now, certainly there's two ways of looking at this. What's fair and equitable, certainly for a smaller organization like his? Are they really going to be learning anything from driving the cars at about 50% speed around a track during some celebrity event down there? Yeah, probably not. But at the same time, what's the rule? What's the spirit or the intent of the rule, and what's the actual effect of it? I think really at the end of the day here, NASCAR, it's going to be very hard for them to actually overturn that, I think. I don't know where that stands at this point. But if Mario Gosselin's team was getting hit with like a very similar penalty, unfortunately, I think it's going to be kind of a similar situation on that front. Luckily, they do have two cars. Maybe they can work something out with that, with the 47 car. Can get higher up in the points and maybe offset some of that penalty that the 74 has, or work offhand. Who knows? And especially with the return of qualifying, where owners' points rank is going to be so critical next season, and they already don't have a great rank to begin with. I just hate it for them. It's just an ugly situation, and it's hopefully we'll get some more information here. I hope they at least get a fair hearing on it, so that we can actually get other evidence about it. I understand there's another user out there that was actually at the racing event that weekend, or at the celebrity event that weekend, that actually can attest to some first-hand information about it. So I hope that gets more spread out there as well. I haven't seen it yet myself, but I saw a Facebook post about it. So I'm hoping that there's some more content that's going to be coming up here, so we get some more information on that front. But I do hate it for those guys. I don't revel in anything about that. And again, we've seen this in the past, where a certain penalty that can happen very early in the year, and especially even before the year even starts. You got Kyle Busch's crew chief getting the lug nut penalty when they're not even having 5 lug nuts anymore. It's strange. Sometimes the rules go haywire there, and they don't really kind of fit the intent anymore. But hopefully something gets worked out there along the way, and maybe reach a more fair solution on that sense too. But yeah, it is too bad. So there's that. Yeah. Oh, yep. And Brian, you're absolutely right. People have to go to the track if they reopen. Exactly. Certainly have to say that for sure. Even if it's Rockingham, Wilkesboro, or any of that, you definitely got to get somebody there too. So, yeah. Yeah, if they don't have any valuable data, then it's not a real test. Yeah, I have to agree. Again, they got to get as much evidence as possible. I'm sure it was easier to have the knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, it's a test, and then have the penalty. We've seen penalties rescinded. Noah Gragson had his penalty rescinded for a technical infraction at Darlington. Obviously, teams in different positions with different things at stake, but hopefully something can work out on that end, because Mike Harmon's team, obviously, they're not testing. They're not a team out there that's doing. I don't think they even do any wind tunnel stuff with the cars that they have out there. They're just trying to get whatever run they can get out of them, and we've seen them have some good runs. It was, I think, probably one of the saddest things this year in terms of the drop in performance in the Xfinity Series has to be that two-car organization, especially the 74. I thought they were breakout runs there last year. Kyle Weatherman's top 10 at Kentucky was one of the most exciting things from last year. It was great to see that team do as well as they did. But man, I mean, they just absolutely crashed back to earth this year, especially the 74 car. And I hate to see them have this penalty on top of it. I just hope they get a fair hearing on that, because I think that at least with the spirit of it, it doesn't seem like it's really fair for those guys at the same time. So we'll see if things work out on that end. Hey there, Sir Wrinklestein. Thank you for joining the chat here tonight as well. Just kind of wrapping up some more discussions from this weekend as well. So do we want to talk about the report of flying cars that we're talking about here? This was something that I thought for sure was a meme, as I think everybody else was thinking. So we're not even a couple weeks away from Ryan Newman expressing his concerns about the next-gen car and possibly not even running next season. We don't know what his plans are still, at least no new information coming around. And then NASCAR pops off with this fan council thing where they're saying, hey, ooh, the future is going to have flying cars. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Isn't flying cars the kind of thing we're trying to avoid here? Isn't that what all the restrictor plates and everything else is about? I mean, it's this tone deafness in the sport there is really unusual sometimes. I don't exactly understand what the deal is, but I don't know. I guess I don't know if it was just one of those things that you put in a test to make sure the people that are answering the questions are paying attention. If it was a throwaway thing, I almost thought that, but I mean, I guess it's never too early to look at the future of the sport. I mean, I remember there was like a Sports Illustrated article that was talking about having dome tracks that, or like seats underneath the banking so you could watch the underside of the cars or something like that, and trying to visualize what the sport would look like in 50 years or something like that. I don't know. Let's try to let's try to actually get some decent racing, or how about not squeezing small teams out of the sport? Then we'll kind of worry about the flying cars later. I like that the people that were writing the articles about it were treating with the seriousness that it demanded, which is posting pictures of the Jetsons car on the tweet there. So that was about the right way to handle that story there, or lack thereof. So that was, I guess, I thought I was going to have more to say about that one. I guess I really don't. So that one kind of speaks for itself, I guess. Let's see here. Yeah, we talked about the mural. We went to the Kyle Larson Championship Parade last week. That was really cool. Great production there for the folks over at the Sonoma Raceway. We're a big part of putting that together. It was great to have Jill Gregory and the staff out there for that. I didn't do any interviews with him. He was, of course, already swamped with reporters and everything. So it was just Last Pro and myself coming down there to check out the festivities. But really cool to see. I mean, Elk Grove is actually not too far from our headquarters here that we're watching this film from. So that's certainly something good to see along the way. But yeah, it was pretty hip there, and congratulations to him. I know they're doing the festivities this weekend in Nashville. Is the award ceremony tonight or tomorrow night? I think it's tomorrow night, if I remember correctly. That's why I wanted to kind of do the premiere today. That, and of course all the Snowball Derby festivities this weekend. But I figured I'd squeeze in the show here with the Bradberry video here as well. So yeah, Big G, there you go. Let's go full NASCAR racers and make them Motorplex. Exactly. I mean, it's all ridiculous. I was thinking the IGPX. Any anime fans in here? Any Cody Ware fans in here? You got the robots that drag their feet on the track. Like, it's just completely impractical. I mean, I think that's somehow more practical than flying cars in NASCAR. But who knows? I mean, I can't. I mean, a lot of the drivers today, I'm not sure if you can trust them in 2 dimensions. Nevertheless, 3. But that's kind of where we're heading here, I suppose. Yeah, how about we get 40 actual cars that are on the ground on the starting grid, and then maybe we'll talk about getting some flying cars at some point. I don't know. And yeah, what about electric cars? Death Killer, exactly. I mean, I think it's interesting you're talking about doing it as a special series. I wonder if it's going to be the same thing as Formula One doing it, where they put drivers that they don't like in the series to put in it, like, or guys that just, didn't stay in Formula One or didn't have long Formula One careers, and putting them in it instead. I mean, I can see them trying to do that. Maybe that's the long-term solution they're going to have with some of these underfunded guys. It says, well, you could either run 30th in a Cup Series race, or you could potentially get a top 5 in an electric car race. They'll probably start marketing it that way. I could see that, as maybe NASCAR handling different things. It used to be back in, I think it was the 70s or something, when they really reduced the schedule and got rid of like those races that were shorter than 250 miles. They would have like, what was it, the Grand National East Series, I believe it was, where they just ran on some of the smaller tracks that were eliminated from the schedule. And then that didn't last very long. I'm almost thinking the electric car series would be kind of the same thing, kind of peter out, or after a short time, not unlike so many cell phones. But I mean, maybe that would be kind of the situation there. But we'll certainly find out. Oh goodness. Yeah, I mean, again, if they get electric cars to replace the gas cars, I hope they can at least sound like the gas cars, and that's probably not gonna be possible. I just don't want them to sound like Power Wheels, because nobody likes that. I mean, can we at least agree on that? I think even people that are into Formula E probably don't like that high pitched, screech that you hear in the air. Get them to sound like, at least like the super speedway cars, so you get that kind of, that kind of noise. Like, that's the one I think a lot of people are missing. I remember in 2008 when they brought the car tomorrow at Daytona, and I was like, wait, where's the noise? They don't sound like they're supposed to sound anymore. And we kind of really haven't had that since then. But I don't know. I guess we're going to find out on that end, too. Let's see. So, a couple other things here, too. I want to, big thanks again to those of you in the Patreon here as well, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. I've actually got some more content I'm working on for the Patreon this offseason. I got another commentary track I'm working on that I've also been waiting a while to do. I'm setting that up for the $10 level. I want to get some more incentive in there for the $10 members in there, and get that going here this offseason. Hopefully get some more standalone video content in there for you guys, so look forward to that. One other thing I'm working on too is getting our newsletter together. Those of you that are in there as well, I've sent out newsletters in the past. Next one is going to be up in January, so I'm working on that. And I actually have already ordered the Patreon exclusive stickers for 2022. Those came in the mail along with these today, so I have those set up, and we'll be starting to work on some mailings here in January. So a lot of things that are very excited about. That's before we even start the season. So far, the planned schedule for 2022, and again, this is highly subject to change. We're going to start off with the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, moving on to Fontana at the end of February. The next race after that will be at Sears Point mid-June, looking towards Las Vegas, which is now in October. And then rounding out the year with the championship race in Phoenix. That'll be the trackside component, at least planned for the schedule. As I mentioned earlier, I am also looking at the Southern 500. That will depend on a number of factors, but we'll see how things play out there. But at least those 5 races, or some combination of them there, that's what we're looking at here. I'm actually still kind of working on figuring out a lot of the logistics for the LA race here coming up here. My understanding is, of course, I think the biggest thing that's going to be challenging about that event, at least for my particular coverage, is I like being in the garage area during the race to track when somebody falls out of the race. Now, in this Coliseum race, according to, again, big thanks to Bob Pockers for posting the updates on this, apparently the garage area is going to be in a parking lot outside of the Coliseum. Now, do I want to be standing out there waiting for a car to roll back out and, all beat up and get the interview there? Probably would be the best way to do it. Unfortunately, I mean, how easy is it going to be to get back into the stadium and see what's actually happening in the race? That's the part I'm going to have to figure out. I'm glad it's a 2-day event, because I want to kind of evaluate how practical it's going to be to get from the garage area back into the stadium or into the press box or wherever you need to be. I'm certainly know that they're not going to let anybody in the middle of the track because it's just going to be too small and too crazy. It's going to be like, I imagine something like the Las Vegas Bull Ring is kind of what we're going to be expecting there. But they're probably going to have the media just up in the press box there. I'm usually not a press box kind of guy. I like to get kind of closer to what's going on down there. But I'm not sure how close I'm going to be able to actually get. But I'm certainly going to try. Luckily, it's not a long drive, so I'm not worried about travel or anything like that as much. I'm working all the details out on that. But that's going to be one thing I'm kind of looking at. I'd like to be able to kind of hop in and out of there when something's happening or something, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an exciting race. I think it's strange that they're going to introduce this new car, and the first thing they're going to do is tell everybody, hey, you got only, 7 cars to run all season, but that first car, you're going to have to beat the ever-loving heck out of it at the Clash at the Coliseum. But that'll be certainly something interesting to kind of look forward to along the way. But it's going to be, it's going to be kind of interesting to kind of look at there too. So I think that's probably about all the news I have that's fit to print here at the moment. Let me see here. Make sure I didn't miss any other notes on this. Yeah, the test sessions. We got the Snowball Derby this weekend. I think that's about it here. I can do some trivia questions here probably to wrap this up here as well. I'll jump through the chat here for any other discussions on this as well. Thank you, Human Sounds Records. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos. And oh my goodness, wow, you mentioned it with John Boyes. That's high praise. I think I haven't seen Summoning Salt, but I have seen John Boyes, and I thought he's a little mean-spirited in some of his work. I'll be perfectly honest, but you can't deny like his passion for sports and what he does in his videos. I thought his Atlanta Falcons one was really good, and I think it was very emotional when they described the Super Bowl there, but also his video on what was it, the Seattle Mariners one. I thought that was really good. That series, I think that was probably his best stuff there. So, but no, thank you. That's very humbling. I appreciate that. But let's see here. So, let's do a couple questions here to wrap this up. So, I do have. Hang on here. We'll bring out the little deal here at the same time, and we'll do a couple questions here to wrap up the show here. So thank you guys for tuning in. I know a little bit of weird day to do this, but we're just doing this. We'll hopefully get the audio issues worked out for our next show here, whatever that's going to be. So go ahead and pick which category you'd like here in the comments. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So there you go. Let me see here. Yeah, Delmo was a cool dude. Absolutely. There you go. Jeremy Clements in his Xfinity 51 card. He's been around since the 2010s. Yeah, exactly. I think the Xfinity series it is. There still are a lot of these underdogs in the sport, but yeah, you do have to look at different places. And you're absolutely right, Big G. Yeah, the Xfinity series, really just seeing Tommy Joe Martin's running his last race before it's reincorporated as the Alpha Prime Racing for next year. Now, they have a lot to be excited about. Raja Karuth is going to be exciting to follow. Cesar Baccarella is trying to do what he can with the Mario Gosselin team. I know there's some stuff going on there. I guess there was a nutritional supplement issue there with him, but it sounds like that's all handled. So get that worked out. But then we'll find out. Yeah, we'll find out what happens on that end there too. But races in the air already exist. It's called Reno. Yep, you're right there, Captain. Absolutely. All right, I see several for drivers here, so we'll probably just do a couple drivers on here at the same time, and we'll wrap up with that for tonight. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. First question. Who was voted best driver in a 1998 Sports Illustrated poll? Who was voted best driver in a 1998 Sports Illustrated poll? All right. Who was voted best driver in a 1998 Sports Illustrated poll? Okay, we got guesses for Dale Jarrett. I'm still getting used to the chat thing on the screen. I'm looking back and forth. I got the other one here. This is really going to take some work to figure out, but we'll do that. Actually, at the end of the show here, I'll probably play the opening again for those of you who didn't see it, because I know we only had, I think we had a couple people when I started here, but we'll play that for you guys. I don't know if I'll make it my closing, but I might do that. I might have to do another closing video. Now, see, that's the frustrating part, because the volume on this is low. I'm sensing it already. I'm gonna have to check that after this is done. But the opening theme, I think it's still pretty loud, so you might have a bit of a dynamic range. So I apologize in advance for anybody with headphones there. You probably want to turn this down when I say we're done for the night here. Okay, so who was voted best driver in a 1998 Sports Illustrated poll? We got guesses for Jeff Gordon, Dale Jarrett, Elliott, Junior Johnson, Mark Martin. Alrighty. Who was voted best driver in a 1998 Sports Illustrated poll? The answer is Dale Earnhardt. Whoop, wrong way. There you go. Earnhardt is indeed the correct answer. I guess whoever was polled right after the Daytona 500, so... I actually did, in 1998, I had a project in, what would that be, sophomore year English? We had to make like a fake magazine with like articles and stuff in it. I did a NASCAR one, of course, and I did like a top 10 drivers thing. And I put Dale Earnhardt as number one, but obviously, you know, Racing Reference didn't exist at the time, but it would have been great to look at that and be like, oh wow, okay, I guess not only did he not win the championship, of course, it was kind of an off year, but certainly not in the first race of the season, so there you go. Buzz is a 60 cycle hum. Oh, that's not good. I have had issues with this. I did use... Okay. I did use an Audacity to fix that issue with the Bradberry video, but if we're getting it here, we certainly can't have that, so we'll have to evaluate. I might go back to my old filter on this, because maybe this one's just not doing the trick, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, if you're getting some feedback here, I do apologize for that. Check the mic plug for that first. Okay. Well, we'll deal with that after this. I'll just wrap this up here pretty soon, so I don't want you guys long suffering on that. All right, let me do a couple more driver questions here. What California driver was 1969 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What California driver was 1969 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? It's bizarre because the microphone's the same distance away. I said it was going to do this after, but it's in there all the way. Yeah, we don't want to mess with that. That'll start popping. Oh, is the Bluetooth earbud doing that? Oh man, I hope not. I hope it isn't. I am doing the Bluetooth, so I don't have like a cable from here. But if that's the problem, yeah, I'll have to reevaluate that. I'll check that after here. Luckily, I could still test the stream in the meantime, so we'll see. But yeah, I do have one in here. I don't like putting two because it just sounds muffled. But obviously, I didn't want to get the audio feedback from my screen here, so I'm not doing that. All right. What California driver was 1969 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? We got Richard Brooks. Joe Rutman, Donahue. Alrighty. And the answer is Dick Brooks. I think a couple of you got that one. Dick Brooks is indeed the correct answer. Maserati 9, you got it. Yeah. I turned off the earbud, but I know if I do that, it's going to definitely get some feedback, so I'm not going to do that. I'll do one more question here, and then I'm going to do some audio checks here after the show tonight. So I appreciate you guys tuning in here. Alrighty. Let's see. Alright, here we go. Last question for tonight. What year in the 60s did Glenn Wood win his last event as a driver? That's the other thing. The Wood Brothers did that great video this week on Twitter, so I really enjoyed that. What year in the 60s did Glenn Wood win his last event as a driver? Don't look it up. Go ahead and guess on that one. Yeah, I'm seeing some feedback on here. That's not good. Whoop. Uh-oh. Did we lose connection here? Let me read the question again. Oh, okay, there we go. I'm seeing some answers. What year in the 60s did Glenn Wood win his last event as a driver? Yeah, I got everything on the same power strip. I heard if it's on different power strips, you get the feedback too. So I can't have that. Alright, 63, 64, 62, 66. What year in the 60s did Glenn Wood win his last event as a driver? And the answer is 1963. 63 is the correct answer. Alrighty. 1963 is the correct answer. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I do apologize for the audio issues here. I'm going to evaluate that immediately after the show tonight. But thank you again for checking out the Gary Bradberry video. It is now live for those of you who have not had a chance to see it here. Our next show will probably be next week. We'll probably do one more here before the holidays, at least. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I know we did over here. We'll probably pop in here before Christmas and do something on that end there. So stay tuned to the Twitter feed at LastCarOnBrock for more information there. LastCar.info is the website. And of course, if you're looking for some bonus content, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Hope that you enjoy the Snowball Derby action this weekend. And we'll see you next time. So here, let me see if this works.